As you see, my topic is a problem of the day. I have been talking about this subject for about 2 years now. We started in London with an Oromo workshop on this issue. We produced quite a number of papers there, and then we had a big panel at the European African Studies Conference in Uppsala last June. That was for Africa as a whole. The panel which I organized had 9 papers, 4 from South Africa, 4 from Ethiopia, 1 from Nigeria. The topic is, the issue is very sensitive now. A lot of land is being sold all over the world, but Africa is the focus. The objective of my paper, I'm not going to do all that, but the paper does that. One is to examine land ownership as an issue interconnected with human rights in Ethiopia, to highlight the manner in which the peasant and pastoralist populations were disposed of the right to land under different Ethiopian regimes in the past. It's not only today, they were disposed since even before. The paper will also argue that land ownership has remained a major constraint in the establishment of social justice in Ethiopia. The paper will discuss the social, political, economic, and environmental consequences of the agricultural development program of the present Ethiopian government, maintaining that the large-scale land lease policy it is following is pushing many indigenous communities to the edge of extinction. We know that from the south, we know that from the Gambela region, we know that from all these minority communities. In general, the paper will question the sustainability of the agricultural development program of the present Ethiopian government. Is it feeding the population? Is this really the right program, right development program that should be adapted? It questions that. I'm not going to go and discuss all of that, but that is the paper that is going to be published later. It will recommend a serious reassessment of the policy of large-scale land lease, the repair of the damage it has done, if possible. The damage is really very large, and the cessation of further destruction of the socio-economic system and of the natural environment. This has to be resolved. And then, when we come to human rights, what does that mean? What does land mean? Or what does this land lease mean to human rights? And what does the Human Rights Convention say? Article 17 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says everyone has a right to own property alone as well as in association with others. In the same article, no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. And this is what land grab is doing in Ethiopia. According to a report presented to the UN 62nd session of General Assembly by this special rapporteur on the right to food and freedom from hunger, the right to food entails that all people have physical access at all times to sufficient nutritionally adequate food. The right to adequate food also places obligations on governments to respect, protect, and fulfill the right to food. Ensuring that food and nutrition security improves over time, and that there are no direct violations of people's physical and economic access to sufficient food to maintain a dignified life. That is what land grab is working against in Ethiopia. Sufficient access to sufficient life, access to or having dignified life. The ongoing land use does that and it works against that. That is what the background of my paper. And then I'll be showing some films which I took from others, because my paper says, in the view, in the experience of the indigenous people, what does land grab, what is land grab is doing when it comes to human rights. About 120 years ago, when the Ethiopian Empire was created, and the first dispossession of land happened during the Emperor Menelik. The land was taken from the conquered areas and were given to feudal landlords, settlers, whom we call Navtenya, because they came carrying guns and were in control of the local population. They were not farmers themselves, but they used the local people who were distributed to them almost as serfs. They owned the cultivators. The second one, this caused, of course, as most of you know, a revolution in Ethiopia. So was one of the causes of the Ethiopian revolution. And there was a regime called Derg, the military regime, and it nationalized land, and it said that the peasants are now going to use it. They have the use right, nothing else. They remained, of course, dispossessed, and the state became the landlord. The new landlord became the state. And it did even worse than the feudal landlords. It exploited the peasants in many ways. It forced farmers' sons to work from. It collected what they produced to use it in the war front. So everything went to the war front during the death that the land produced. And even the human beings that cultivated the land, the young people, were sent to the war front. Then came the EPRDF, and it adapted the land tenure system of the previous regime. The land remained state land, state-owned. The indigenous peoples, the peasants. When I say the indigenous people, people who are cultivating the land, who are settled on the land, they remained dispossessed. And now there, a lot of human rights violation is taking place. Of course, who are the receivers, land receivers? Domestic and international land leases, from 45 to 99-year lease. 99 years leased to a foreign company, a foreign land, a foreign state. The owners are also states, as I show in the next one. I mean the ones who are leasing. Well, this is just a map I took from the old. This one is the Gabba-Naftanya area. Here, in the same area, during the Derg regime, the big resettlements from the north were made in the same area, in the same regions where the Gabba system existed before. Now settlements from the north, or settlers from the north were taken, particularly in the southwest. The Derg resettled, no, not 60, but 600,000 people from the north here in 1978 to 1986. In fact, it's more, because they have settled also others in other places. Of course, the people in the southwest were displaced into Sudan. The Berta, even the people from Gambela, Oromos were refugees in the Sudan during the 1980s. Today, the same area are being sold in large pieces. If you look at Benishangul, That is where the Barta and Gumus people live. 635,831 hectares of land is sold. This is low estimate. There are, according to this is from Auckland Institute report. When they were there were 220 investors. That is from outside, which means local, domestic as well as international. Gambela, which is today jokingly called Karaturistan, because he said he owns 300,000 hectares of land there. That's a big amount of, size of land. There are, you have in the film that there are about 800 leases, but in fact the Auckland report says 202 leases or contractors have had land when they were there. In the southern peoples, and nations and nationalities and peoples region, 470,287 hectares is leased. There are only 8 investors there, big ones at that time. It includes people, Al-Moody is taking a lot of land all over. And then Oromia, where according to that report, there are 899 investors. 1,319,214 hectares of land is leased, according to the Auckland Institute report. In Madagascar, when the government was going to lease 1 million hectares of land, the people made a revolution and the government was overthrown. In Oromia, just in Oromia, over 1 million hectares of land is sold. In fact, that can be even almost double today. This is a low estimate. Why so much land is being sold in Ethiopia? Because it's so cheap. As you have heard it, they just give it free. 1.25 to 10 US dollars was the lowest. It has come up in some places in Oromia about $40. It varies now. I look at Sudan. Sudan is still cheap, $3 to $20 per hectare. Mali 6 to 12. African average is $350 to $800 per hectare. The difference is huge. Brazil and Argentina, 5,000 to 6,000. And Germany, you can't compare.
A quick question, I'm sorry, because the numbers are important, I think we will forget later. Do you have any data or any opinion, things, this is, if I'm an Ethiopian government, and I want money, for my revenue or whatever, then they must have these international statistics. Why do they give it away? What is the motivation behind it? I don't think they are shareholders of Qatar, the officials. Why do they give it away when the international statistics are 5,000 or in African standard from 350 to 800? Why do I give it away if I'm an Ethiopian official to a foreign? If it is domestic, related to that, I can understand. Why do they give it away to an Indian company at that rate? Why is there any?
Well, what they say is they will create a crop for export. That is what they say, export, hard cash, hard currency from outside. It will create job. That is the two arguments they have. But we don't know, money is exchanging hand under the table. There must be some corruption here, but they have argument for this. Well, this is a figures I just showed you on the map. The whole area in Ethiopia that is sold, that is handed over, is 3,619,509 according to Auckland Institute report. But this is delivered. They have promised much more. Promise means there is land allocated for sale, for release. In Gambella alone, according to some of the reports, about 535,000 hectares are already delivered, given. And more is promised. Who are buying large-scale land release in Oromia, Pakistan? Look at who the leasers are. It's governments as well as companies from all these countries. And this has repercussions in the future. Governments own land in your country. These companies have, there's support from the governments. See what is being, put on place. I mean, how are you going to struggle against this if you are a peasant, or even if you are people like the Oromo? This is a question that has to be really taken. I mean, the issue has to be taken very seriously by everybody. The question of land is becoming the major problem in the future for our people. Impact on indigenous people's human rights to food. That is the issue that we have to look at. The people supplement in Gambella their food with fishing, hunting as source of meat, and access to a wide variety of food from the woodlands, forests, and grasslands. That is disappearing. Wild honey is collected from the forests. The trees are used for keeping beehives. Honey is a source of income for many families in the indigenous communities all over Ethiopia. And people use the forest for nuts and fruits, for medicine, for grass for our tupos, they say. It is our life. If it is destroyed, where should we go? This is an annual villager who said that. For investors in large-scale farming, cultivate food for their own countries or for the export market and not for local markets. This is causing food shortage in the country. They are not producing for the local market. Karutu says, the one who is leasing a big chunk of land in Gambella, he is going to export. He is going to send these products where the money is, where the market is. For him, it doesn't matter whether people in Ethiopia are starving. He's going to make money, and he's interested in profit. You know what is being produced is also agro-fuel, not food. It's not for food crops. It's just to produce fuel. This causes for the food insecurity, particularly for the food. Land which is previously would produce food for domestic consumption now produce other kinds of crop for export. Food price, as you have heard, has increased so tremendously in Ethiopia now, almost by 50% in few years. Because the poor cannot buy food. There is no food, food products in the market. Consequences of land lease on livestock. You have seen they don't have the pastures. They cannot keep their cattle anymore. Trees that were used as sheds for livestock are cut down. A farmer in Bako is saying in one of these films, there are no shading trees for our cattle now against the heat of sun. This seems simple. This seems simple, but is really important for our cattle, he says. And this is really proved by research. There is a lot of research that cattle need shades during the, to protect themselves from the sun. It's good for the shades. It's good for their health, for the food intake, for milk production. It says the research says that access to water, because they block. These farms are around the big rivers, like the Gibe River in Barco. Around that, there is Karaturi. They do not have any access to water. And that's the big problem, as you know, in Wallo, before in Afar, the Karayu Oromo during the 1974 drought, because land around the Awash was leased to international commercial farming. They could not come to the river, and when the big drought came, so many people died, and the cattle died first, and then many people died. About 200,000 people died in that famine. Many of them are from the Awash Valley. It is reported in one of the newspapers in Ethiopia, Addis Fortune, that many displaced farmers have to sell their livestock at throwaway prices, unable to take care of them because of which many took hit on price. The prices went down. There were so many, livestock became cheap, the price became cheaper. And places like this are now farmlands, commercial farmlands. This is Borana. In Borana, Alamuddin has taken a big area for ranching. This ranch accommodates 65,000 heads of cattle, 400,000 goats and sheep. And these produce food not for internal consumption, mainly for the Arabian Peninsula. It's for the hotels there. It is for the military and establishments, both in Ethiopia and the outside of Ethiopia. So food is expensive. Yeah. After 10 minutes, I'll rush through. Well, anyway, house need shades. That is what I said already. Look how beautiful this grassland is. When the trees are cut, they come to the existing tree and crowd there. And lastly, it becomes like that. A Gambela is going to be like that after, say, 10, 15 years. So some trees exist, and look, the house neat and the crowd there. Impact on the environment. Destroys the remaining woodlands and the forests in the country. Many local leasers cut down the forest, burn charcoal, make quick profits, and abandon the land. They also sell wood. That is what is happening. That is what is happening. Some of the local leasers, contractors, take huge 10, 15, not 10,000, but 1,000 hectares of land, cut the trees, make a lot of money from charcoal, disappear. Because they do not, they don't can't pay. Yeah. So this is destroying the environment. Impact on large-scale land lease on indigenous communities, human right to water, hinders access to water, of course, depletes groundwater because they are using groundwater for irrigation, pollutes source of water for human and livestock use now and in the future, because once you know the soil becomes toxic, it will seep the water, the rain water will seep down, and that is polluted for a long time. For the future, we don't know how long time it is going to remain that way. This is a case with large-scale flower farming in central Oromia, and that is one of the biggest polluters in the environment, and one of the biggest, this flower farming causing food production, decreasing food production. Major cut flower producing clusters of Ethiopia is in the area of, south of Addis Ababa, west of Addis Ababa, and this area was the bread basket for Addis Ababa, for Finfinne, and for the population in the past. It's a very fertile land, it was, and produced teff on large scale. That is now planted with roses. It is under those type of white sheets. You see the cattle are just by the roadside grazing there. The land which they used to graze is taken over by these flower farms, and this belongs to Karaturi. The Chinese have taken a lot of land, in that area and building factories. And these factories are pollute the rivers because they are not really controlled by the government, by the Ethiopian government. There isn't that much control. There are regulations, but those regulations are not respected. Chinese tannery. And this is Moyo River, polluted by the Tax leather factory. Looks like that. Look like that. Contaminated water of the Moyo River, Oromia near the bank, looks like that. And this goes, in these small rivers feed into the Awash River. And the Awash River goes all the way down through Afar and the Asaita, and then it disappears in the swamp. But there are millions of people who depend on this river, and it's now polluted, being polluted, and millions of cattle drink from this river. The cattle die in hundreds, they say, but nobody follows and reports. 10 heads of cattle die here today, no report. The same thing tomorrow, down the river, no report. But if you collect that, if you really add that together, there is a lot of destruction. There is poverty is being created for the population who live along the river. The rivers drain also into Lake Koka. The Koka is a dam built in 59 or 60, 1959 or 60. It was a beautiful one, not this big one. I used to go that way to Awasa, and you see that. Now, Al Jazeera writes like that. Ethiopia's once beautiful Koka Lake is today heavily polluted, but the water flows a toxic green. Most of the fish are dead, and the thousands of people, it's about 15,000 people who live around that lake, who have no choice but to drink the lake's water, each day are left to deal with a range of problems from babies born with birth defect to chronic diarrhea. A local Oromo resident stated in desperation, it's better to die thirsty than to drink this water. We are drinking a disease. We told the local authorities that our cattle and goats died due to this polluted water, but nobody helped. And that is how the water looks like in some places. And look at this. Amina, crying while telling a story about the death of her family members due to the water they drank from the pond. I gave birth to 9 children. 6 of them died. Mafida, Adiri, Kahil, Sultan, Kasim, Khalil. 3 survived. My husband also died. I have lost 7 members of my family. They were all vomiting and having diarrhea with food in it, blood in it. We visited a health center, but we were told the problem was associated with water. I feel sad about my dead children and husband. I wake at night thinking of them, and I now worry if my remaining children will survive. I don't even know if I will survive, except for God, we have no hope. And this is happening. Disasters, finishing. Short and long-term effects of flower farming, polluted groundwater, as I said, kills microorganisms that are beneficial for the soil, kills insects beneficial for pollination, depletes the groundwater, as I said, affects the indigenous people's livelihood by hindering access to clean water in the Upper Rift Valley region in Ethiopia for years to come, and affects indigenous populations' human rights to water and food in general. Well, these are the concluding remarks I have. International commercial farmers are not producing food for the country. Ethiopia's food problem has become worse. Loss of livelihood and food insecurity of indigenous communities is evident now. The indigenous communities are dispossessed of the means of livelihood without consultation and compensation. They are not consulted. They are not given sufficient compensation if they are given at all. Because in so many places they are not given any compensation. They are not consulted. Even the local authorities, even the government authorities in the locality, they are not consulted when land is leased to international contractors. The recommendation is to secure land, give security of land rights to the local population, give them, help them, with loans and with extension services so that they can improve their own production. And that is a rush through of the issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Obviously, this is an interesting topic that we can continue talking. I want to take a few questions, and then we're going to go for lunch. We know where everybody's tired and people are hungry, and I think I'm going to rush through and make questions very short and response very short as well, so that we can get through different questions. And Afrasi, one.
Two things on the Lake OSA issue. There was a group, Mardasa in California, is kind of working on raising awareness on that. So if we can support them when we see the email, that's great. The second thing, when looking at your graph of companies and the areas that they're investing in and how much land they buy, I didn't see the Chinese on that list. Why is that? Are they a different case, or why is that?
The Chinese are not on that list because they are not leasing land, I think, for farming. They are leasing land for factories. And they have taken up, Sulta is there, they say, and so many around that place, around Ataki, the Blue area. So even down to Mojo.
Let me give Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Hamza. And Well, I have some maybe additional comments. Thank you very much actually for giving us the history, the background, and all this graphic information, including the documentaries. I see in this the presentation actually two ironies here. If we remember some 40 years ago, or just at the outbreak of the Ethiopian revolution, just towards the end of it, the old regime actually instituted the 5-year economic plan, and that economic plan, in fact, included more or less similar initiated similar process of leasing land and allowing investors also. For a very long time, the Ethiopian government resisted doing that. Well, there were some plantations on our screen, you have mentioned, some in the Rift Valley. And maybe those old enough maybe to remember that there was a protest and farmers coming to the capital protesting that the eviction, which in fact compared to this is just almost nothing. The irony is that at that time, now in fact almost all who are now in power were opposing the old regime, and they were the ones supporting the peasants who were protesting against it and using that in fact for the revolution. But right now, in fact, 30, 40 years later, they are doing more or less not actually, on a massive scale, doing the same thing and leading this time. And the second one is, the second irony I see is, in the 1980s, Turk, as you have mentioned, had carried out a very massive resettlement project. And the justification at the time, actually resettlement, which is bringing people from the north to the south, or more or less in the southwest, more for security reasons and also more of control and using this land. And along this resettlement, there was this villagization process, bringing the farmers, even in the south or elsewhere, together into a village, mechanized village. And the justification for that at the time was, well, we can't offer services if they are all scattered. Their farming system should be modernized, and it's only this way that we can build roads and provide some clinics and schools and make them more productive. I'm just quite surprised to see the same kind of explanation. Actually, looks like just taking a page from what an official could have said in the 1980s. They say, well, we can't offer anything, and this is how their lives would be improved if the farmers are moved from the land and recouped and put into settlements, while in fact opening the land for investment. So that's these two ironies I see. And by the way, those in power right now actually criticize the Derg, rightly at the time, that villagization and resettlement was wrong, and used that to mobilize forces against the Derg, which in fact were right then, but definitely wrong now. So that's one. And the other point, in fact, I would like to emphasize, which you've in fact made very well, I'm afraid I'm just repeating, is this progressive alienation, continuous alienation of land from the indigenous people. You started from Mildek, and even before that, actually, this Ethiopian system mostly worked in the north, the Bulcha system. That pre-Mildek Bulcha system, which operated mostly in the north, actually, at least the people who owned the land remained on the land, although they paid tributes, and people were assigned the goods, actually, with access to the tributes, the resources, the labor of the farmers, not actually the land. But what happened in the south, as we have indicated, is that during Mildek, and in fact continued in the early 20th century under his successors, the government took the land, totally nationalized. I mean, took over and claimed that land belongs to the government or the imperial state. But at least when they reallocated or surveyed the land, at least they left 1/3 to the indigenous people and took 2/3 of the land, which they distributed to the officials and all. So the government, at least even in Milik's time, or immediately after, took 2/3 of the land. And in fact, that was outrageous. And in fact, at the time of the revolution, including those now in power, so this was injustice. And the result of that is, in fact, the land reform that issued by the Derg in the early days. I'm sorry, I'm just taking more time. Is the land reform. Well, initially it was good, I thought, but because it says land actually belongs to the people who farm it, and in fact farmers were organized in 20-hectare land, and in fact they were supposed to manage and distribute that, and that looked good. But in 2 or 3 years later, with new laws of cooperativization, the Derg changed the land reform law that it issued, and completely, in fact, took the land out of the hands of the farmers, and in fact used it to reward supporters, to mobilize, in fact, and farmers became at the mercy of the government. And now we see the EPRDF coming, and when they came, in fact, one thing that they agreed with the Derg is on the land policy. Although they made already many changes, and at least in the south, they said we are not going to give back. And the argument for a very long time was that if we do that, farmers would lose control of it, and we have to protect them. That was the argument, in fact, not to privatize land in the early days. But all of a sudden, in the last 10 years, they have just got a new vision, and that's actually leasing land on a massive scale. So what we see in reality is actually this continuity from the past, from Milik's period into the present government, of this progressive land alienation from the farmers. And what used to be 2/3, what is it? The imperial government claimed all land, and then in fact gave back at least 1/3 to the indigenous owners. But what we saw, in fact, is the manipulation and the changing of the Derg land policy through cooperatives, and now, in fact, through investment to foreign and the local investors, is the total alienation of land. Yeah. Now, in fact, the government owns every piece of land, and with the government, the farmers don't have any claim to it.